Could I get your read on how Topuria versus Olivera plays out?
Man, that's one where your heart's telling you, Charles, and your brain's telling you Ilia. It's just that one's a coin flip. Can't count Charles out. Ilia's on an absolute tear. Charles does get hit and Ilia cracks. That fight I am very excited for.
Ilia might get a bit of a fright at how big Charles is when he stands opposite him. Fighters do that with me, who fight at lightweight. Know what I mean? I'll never forget Bobby Green looking over at me and being like, what, he's big him. Same with Chandler. Like people thought Chandler was going to be bigger than me, and he just weren't.
MMA pros have just shared their final predictions on the upcoming fight between Ilia Topuria versus Charles Olivera. Ian Gary said Ilia Topuria was already dangerous at featherweight, and now he's even tougher. He also praised Charles Olivera as always exciting and never boring whenever he steps in.
I think Ilia is a very dangerous opponent, and getting an extra 10 pounds, that's a dangerous person, and he was dangerous at featherweight. Oh God, when Charles goes out there and does trials, it's just the most entertaining fighter we've seen. There's never a dull fight.
Tim Welch called a Topuria versus Olivera fight risky, noting style differences. Olivera attacks forward with wild knees, while Topuria boxes low. He also questioned Topuria's claim of a promised title shot.
That's a dangerous fight. Marab calls it stupid to make Ilia Topuria fight Charles Olivera before Islam Makhachev.
How was that?
Ilia Topuria says he got promised that he would fight for the title if he vacates.
By who? The security guard outside his room?
Yeah, he kind of hinted that he got promised that. I feel like Charles, Ilia,
That'd be hard.
I think Ilia might batter him. The way Charles comes forward with those reckless knees,
And he's got the
dangerous.
chin floating up high too.
Stands up tall like a really tall Muay Thai guy, and Ilia's like a low boxer. That's a dangerous fight for Charles.
Chael Sonnen was surprised that Ilia Topuria is favored over Charles Olivera. He questioned why a former champ with multiple defenses and the most UFC submissions would be such an underdog despite his legacy.
Minus 370 favorite Topuria is to beat Charles Do Bronx Oliver. Minus 370.
That is insane. That is not right.
To be the world champion that defended 3 times, has more submissions than anyone in UFC history, and he's a minus 370 favorite.
Mateus Gamrot picked Charles Olivera to win by knockout against Ilia Topuria at UFC 317. He respects Topuria's power, but believes Oliveira's experience, size, and striking will prove too much.
Who do you think wins, Ilia or Charles?
Interesting matchup. The both guys has changed. Like if Ilia hit Charles Oliveira head, so he can knock him down for sure. But I think Oliveira is so big for him and for all-rounder fighter, and I think Oliveira will win this fight.
Mateus Gamrot called the Olivera versus Topuria fight exciting and close, but leaned toward Olivera. He noted Topuria's knockout power, but highlighted Oliveira's size, experience, and ground game as key advantages.
You think Oliveira's gonna win? I haven't heard a lot of people say that.
I think so. He's big. It depends how his performance will be in the fight, because sometimes he looks bad, but sometimes he looks fantastic. So I think that in the ground he will be much better for Ilia. Especially like the gabarit is much different. Oliveira is big guy. Ilia is small guy. So if Oliveira catch him in the ground, I think this is gonna be big problem. But like I say, Ilia can knock him out for him also, So this is like 50-50, but I think Oliveira will win.
Gilbert Burns called the matchup exciting and asked for a prediction, but Matty Betts confidently said Ilia Topuria would smoke Charles Olivera. Burns disagreed, saying it wouldn't be that one-sided.
That's an amazing fight. Who you picking that one?
I think Ilia smokes him, bro.
He smokes?
I think he smokes him.
I don't think so, bro.
Gilbert Burns said the Olivera versus Topuria fight is much closer than it looks. When Matty Betts noted Topuria is the clear favorite, Gilbert joked about the odds makers, calling them shadowy figures who often get it wrong. Matty replied that while they miss sometimes, they also get plenty right.
It's a very bad matchup.
I think he's a way closer fight than you think. Why?
The odds makers have Ilia as...
Who is the odds maker, bro? Tell me your name. Who are these guys? Odds maker. Who's these guys, bro? Who's these guys?
These guys are the shadows behind the counter.
Guys made so many mistakes.
Of course they make mistakes, but like They're also right a lot too.
Khamzat Chimaev praised Ilia Topuria's rise in the UFC, recalling their early days training together at All Stars Gym. He admired Ilia's work ethic and said success was always in his future.
Очень известный сейчас боец. Ты с ним вроде как давно знаком. Он тренировался в Альстаре вместе, вот до еще его всей известности. Когда вот тренировки ты его видел, ты видел этот потенциал в будущем?
Ну, конечно, ну просто тогда, в то время, этот был он хорошим топовым бойцом в Брейве, как и я, мы оба там выступали. Видно было, потому что он такой пахарь и хочет добиться чего-то в своей жизни. И парень добился всех высот, которые можно в этом спорте добиться.
Gilbert Burns said Ilia facing Charles is a better stylistic matchup than fighting Islam. He mentioned Charles had injuries before the Makhachev fight and wants a healthy rematch. Burns highlighted the contrast. Islam is a dominant grappler, while Ilia relies on sharp boxing and limited kicks, offering a very different challenge.
Do you think Ilia it's a better matchup for Ilia than Islam, obviously?
For Charles?
No, I'm saying like Ilia, like obviously Ilia fighting Charles is a better matchup for him than fighting than Islam.
I heard so many things that Charlie was very hurt on that first fight, but he had to take the fight in Abu Dhabi. He tried to pull out the UFC, kind of pressure him to get the fight. I gotta see that rematch, you know. I gotta see. Let's see. This guy 100% what he's gonna do against Islam, but it's a very different matchup. One guy's a boxer, the other one he's a high-level grappler. But so Topuria is still a good grappler, but no kicks, no. It's different, very different matchup.
Javier Mendez said he'd bet on Ilia Topuria to beat Charles Olivera, pointing to Oliveira's upright stance and Topuria's pressure style as key reasons Ilia could land cleaner, more effective shots.
Ilia, power puncher, boxer, low stance versus Charles Oliveira. If someone gave you $100,000 to bet on that fight, who would you bet?
Ilia. But if you're asking who I would want to win, I'll put Charles. I'll put my money on Charles.
Yeah.
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin. Really, really nice. Just like what he did with Volk. Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does.
Javier Mendez favors Ilia Topuria due to his sharp boxing and clean punches. He said Oliveira's upright stance makes takedowns tough without perfect timing. Despite Oliveira's reach and kicks, Mendez sees Topuria winning.
It's basically because Charles is going to stand in there upright, like you're saying, and when he gets inside, he's going to use that boxing, and Charles' head's going to be up, and Ilia's got a really good way of connecting with that chin on the inside. Really, really nice. Just like what he did with Volk. You know, and I think if Charles doesn't get him up the middle with knees or front kicks up the middle, he's going to have a hard time with his boxing against him, and he's going to have a hell of a time trying to take him down. So it's going to be one of those where Ilia's got more opportunities than Charles does. But Charles can surprise us with his length, you know, and up the middle would be really, really well suited for him. And the kicks too, you know, body, head type thing, you know, low, high. You know, he could do really well with that.
Renato Moicano said Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira is a tougher fight than many think. Though some expect Topuria to dominate, Moicano disagrees, calling Charles very tough. After podcasting with him, Moicano now leans toward picking Oliveira, admitting his choice is partly because they share Brazilian roots.
You're fighting on the Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria card. Charles is a big underdog. How do you see that fight going?
Man, that's a tougher matchup that a lot of people think. They think Topuria gonna run through Charles. You never count Charles Oliveira out. I think he's very tough. But Topuria is good, you know? He's 145. It's going to be a tough fight for both fighters. I don't have one opinion on that. I was leaning more to Topuria, but today I just had a podcast with Charles on my Brazilian channel. It's just very hard to not like the guy. That makes harder, you know, to pick against him. So I'm going with Charles just because he's Brazilian.
Robert Whitaker said lightweight is now the UFC's most thrilling division with Ilia Topuria joining. He believes champions moving up earn big fights, though money often outweighs rankings or fairness.
I think the lightweight division is the most exciting division right now. It's just death row in the lightweight division at the moment. Like the top 5, dude, that guard up there right now, it's just killers, man.
But especially with Ilia Topuria entering the mix, right? The whole big story over the past week was he obviously vacated the title at featherweight, but apparently he said the UFC told him, we promise you a title opportunity if you vacate. That's what he told Spanish media. Or I think he said as a backup he would fight Charles Oliveira. And now they've gone back and forth. What do you reckon, Rob?
I don't know what was promised or anything, but I feel like if you're in a lower division and you vacate the title, you should go straight to the top of the pecking order. I'd like to see him go straight into a title shot. Okay. Understandably, it can be tricky that way because there are a lot of guys, like, styles make fights. So if the champion of a lighter division has a better style to beat the guy in the high division, where's the fairness of that? Because that guy may not get through 10 guys to get to a title shot. He may not get through the contenders. Yeah, I just feel like there should be a certain amount of weight for being the champion of the division already. I can also see the side of the argument for the guys in the division that have been like, brother, like, I've had to slog, especially in the lightweight division, like, I've had to slog my way to the top of this division, and it is death row there. I think UFC's going to do what makes them the most money.
MMA Guru said Topuria versus Olivera would sell well, title or not, and called it exciting. Demetrius Johnson said Topuria is big, walks at 191, and suits lightweight better now.
If Ilia Topuria fights Charles Oliveira on a pay-per-view, that's a big deal.
Oh, it's going to be bigger.
They don't need to wait for an interim belt. They don't need to wait for an undisputed. So, yeah. I don't know how he's going to do it lightweight, though. Maybe you can speak on that. He's a smaller guy coming up.
It's a smaller coming up. It'll be interesting because he is bigger from when I heard him on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like 191, I think he was walking around. It's massive. So for him to cut to 145 seems almost like, how did he do that? But now that he's going up to 155, I always like when athletes go up.
Michael Bisping warned that one slip against Olivera could lead to a quick submission loss, but still picked Ilia Topuria, praising his striking, wrestling, and smart decision to move up in weight.
And if you make one mistake with Charles Oliveira, boom, it's over. Quick as a flash, he's throwing on a submission. Gogoplatters, omoplatters, triangles, reverse triangles, you name it. Heel hooks, knee bars, whatever, okay? You make one mistake with Charles Oliveira and it is all over. Now, with all that said, I am leaning towards Ilia Topuria. I think the power in the hands is significant. Of course, he has the wrestling to probably be able to stop the takedowns, but more importantly, he's coming up to 155. I say this all the time. Everybody should move up a weight class.
Paddy Pimblett thinks Ilia Topuria can beat Charles Oliveira at UFC 317. He questioned Oliveira's durability, praised his ground skills, and said the jump to 155 pounds could show a big size gap.
Ilia beats Charles then?
I think he might, to be honest. Charles is a bit chinny, isn't he? You know what I mean? He's had about 40 fights or something. He always gets punched. He always gets cracked.
Yeah.
So,
he's reckless, but he's super exciting.
Yeah, he is.
And he's dangerous.
Exciting. If he gets him down, I can see him winning because that 10 pounds difference is a big difference.
Yeah.
145 to 155, it's a big difference. People don't understand that because they don't watch the sport or they're not involved in the sport. But that 10 pounds makes a big difference. And especially, like, Charles is like my height. Ilia's like down here when I stand up, you know what I mean? So it's gonna make a big difference. Like,
Paddy Pimblett said Topuria might underestimate how strong Oliveira feels in person. He noted fighters from lighter divisions often misjudge size until fight night, using Bobby Green and Michael Chandler as examples.
Ilia might get a bit of a fright at how big Charles is when he stands opposite him. Fighters do that with me, who fight at lightweight. You know what I mean? I'll never forget Bobby Green looking over at me and being like, what, he's big him. Same with Chandler. Like people thought Chandler was going to be bigger than me, and he just weren't.
Sean O'Malley called Topuria versus Olivera a close fight. He's emotionally backing Olivera for his heart and experience, but logically favors Topuria's power and momentum. He's excited for the upcoming clash.
Could I get your read on how Topuria versus Olivera plays out?
Man, that's one where your heart's telling you, you know, Charles, and your brain's telling you Ilia. It's just that one's a coin flip. Can't count Charles out. Ilia's on an absolute tear. You know, Charles does get hit and Ilia cracks. That fight I am very excited for.
John Anik questioned the lack of respect for Charles Oliveira, reminding fans that Justin Gaethje called him the hardest hitter. He said Topuria has a big chance to shine and prove himself now.
Topuria do it again and knock out another legend.
Dude, is Ilia Topuria getting the red corner? I mean, my goodness. Can we put some respect on the name Charles Oliveira? No, it's a fascinating fight. Yes, Justin Gaethje, who's the hardest man he's ever been hit by in all of his fights, and it's Charles Oliveira. And I'm just excited to see what Charles can do because the betting line suggests that he's up against it. A lot of Charles's contemporaries are suggestive that this is a custom-made matchup for Ilia Topuria. He's taken on the most decorated finisher in UFC history and the man who reigns supreme atop this weight class. So fascinated to see it. And I think my biggest takeaway with Topuria is just the way guys like Kenny Florian talk about him in such superlative terms. And, you know, we'll see if he can live up to the hype. I'm excited to see him in a division, not cut too much weight. And yeah, great way to sort of usher him in, headlining International Fight Week for the soon-to-be vacant UFC lightweight title.
Modestas Bukauskas backed Ilia Topuria to beat Charles Olivera, praising his power, wrestling, and grappling. He called Topuria a little pocket rocket and respected Oliveira's skills, but still picked Topuria to win.
I've got to say, Ilia Topuria, just because although Oliveira's like jiu-jitsu is very good and he's got very crisp himself, I don't know, Ilia Topuria, he's like a little pocket rocket, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? When he comes in close and land those big shots, obviously he's you know, a bit of a size difference in terms of height and stuff like this, but he's also got great jiu-jitsu as well and good wrestling. So yeah, in my opinion, I think Topuria would take that.
Alexander Volkanovski praised Ilia Topuria's power, precision, and focus. He said Topuria stays calm under pressure and always hunts for openings, warning that one clean shot from him can end any fight.
Ilia has a chance to knock anyone out. You know, he's got solid hands and very, very dangerous, and he's very he's got a very good focus. So even when things aren't going his way, he's still, you know, he's got like this tunnel vision of, I'm going to find this shot. And that's dangerous when you've got a guy like you. You're like jabbing him up, jabbing, he's missing shots. Some people usually start to like, oh, I better watch out, I better not throw shots until I know they're there. You know, start second guessing themselves. I don't know if I've seen that in Ilia. So when you've got someone that's that stoic through that process, you know, he could definitely find that shot, and if he does, he could put anyone even in the lightweight division out.
Volkanovski said Charles Oliveira could be a tough challenge for Topuria because he never backs down. He noted Topuria struggles under pressure, and Oliveira's forward style might disrupt his rhythm and timing.
He's going to find tough guys. I don't think Charles Oliveira is going to be on the back foot at all. I think he's going to, you know, that's something that'll be different for Ilia. I don't think he's ever had someone be like, nah, jam forward as well, if that makes sense. So we'll see how Ilia goes if he's on the back foot. I think I've seen him a couple of times where he had to go on the back foot a little bit. He just doesn't have the same shots, you know, have his same strikes, or, you know, his game plan to find the shots just changes a little bit. And I think it throws him off a little bit. So I think earlier on, seeing that adjustment will be interesting, because I think Charles is going to come with, even though he's high, there would be opportunities for Ilia to land, but I feel like maybe if Ilia's on the back foot, let's see how he goes there. That's going to be interesting.
Jorge Masvidal said Ilia Topuria's power feels like a welterweight's, even in light training. He praised Topuria's striking and noted his move to lightweight added muscle and new camp in Madrid for bigger challenges.
I trained with him like numerous times. You know, when you go with somebody who's just like dense, it's not even that they're throwing hard, you're just working out, but you can feel like this dude, like his bones weigh extra 50 pounds than everybody else, you know? Like he's just dense. So since I was like training with him, wrestling with him, I'm like, man, this guy hits like 170 pounds, he's 145. I was telling people that back then. So it's just, you know, obviously in the fight, you don't know if he's gonna get to connect, but I always in the back of my mind, like, this guy connects on these 45 pounders, bro, he's gonna change him up. Because I remember feeling his power when I'm at 170, 3-4 weeks away from the fight. I'm like, this guy could crack, like for real, he could crack, you know?
That's it for today's video. So what are your thoughts on this? What do you think about this fight, and who are you picking? We would love to hear your thoughts on this matchup. So share your thoughts in the comment section, and make sure to subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. Also check out our other videos on the screen right now.